All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hi, welcome. My name is Wayne Turmel from the Remote Leadership Institute. I am speaking to you today from Las Vegas, and welcome. Here's what this first ever Remote Leadership Institute Facebook Live is about. If you're watching this, odds are that you're also one of the hundreds of people who took advantage of our recent video series on leading remote teams with more confidence and less stress. Hundreds of you watched the videos, left comments. It was really an honor to be part of that and see the response that we got. And at the end of that series, we made a special offer of a chance to participate in a really great learning experience, something called the Remote Leadership Certificate Series. And while a number of you have taken advantage of this, there are a lot of questions. And I thought the easiest way to answer the majority of them would be to just talk through three, probably four of the main questions that we're getting from people who are either interested in taking the course for themselves or are wondering if it's right for people in their organization. And so whether you are an individual leader, excuse me, remains of a really ugly head cold. If you are an individual leader wondering if this program is right for you, I'll be able to answer those questions. And if you are responsible for leadership development in your organization, we'll answer questions that are appropriate for you too. And of course, you can always reach out to us at any time at the Remote Leadership Institute, and we'll be happy to answer them. But let's kind of start at the beginning. We made the offer that folks should, if they're really interested in understanding either how to make the transition from traditional leadership to leading a remote team, or they're new to the position, what's in it for them? And so we're going to take these questions kind of in the order of importance that they came to us. And the first one is, how is the Remote Leadership Certificate Series different from all the other workshops out there? And, you know, that's always tricky for a company that specializes in training to do that without talking about the competition, and that's not what we're about. It's interesting, though, I spoke to a client in Europe just this morning about this, and one of the things that she said that she found different about what we do, and I think her explanation and story is as clear as anything I could describe it, is she said that a lot of the big training companies out there that have done leadership training for a long time focus on leadership, which is absolutely right. I mean, rule number one in the long distance leader is leadership first, location second. But that she felt that while the program is delivered virtually, it wasn't specific to the challenges that remote leaders face. And that is really a big difference with what we do at the Remote Leadership Institute. While our programs are certainly focused on leadership, and as you've heard me say before, Genghis Khan ruled half the world and never held a WebEx meeting, so it's certainly doable, right? It's always been doable, and people have always done it. But we now know what makes successful remote teams, and so that's really our goal, is to help people in short, very focused modules understand both the context, why is this so difficult, why does it feel so strange, but also what are the tactical, practical things we can do to make the job easier and help us and our people adjust to this new way of work more appropriately. And that's really the big difference. It takes the evergreen concepts of leadership, how do I coach my employees, and say, yeah, all that stuff that you've been taught for years about coaching your employees is critical. And when you do it at a distance, you need to take time zones and technology into consideration. Maybe doing it, you know, between planes at the airport isn't the right way to send the message that you're really listening and concerned about the other person. So The biggest difference between traditional leadership training and what we do is that it is focused on those nuances. We acknowledge the evergreen realities of leadership, but we also are really specific to what does this mean. And there are a couple of other things, and some of you have joined. Hi, Matt, and some others. Lovely to have you with us. There are a couple of other things that are part of this. One is that this is virtually instructor-led, but it's not a webinar. And that is a question that a lot of people have got. You know, why should we invest so much time and money in a series of webinars? And the fact is, this isn't a webinar. The industry has kind of fumbled over itself a little bit, but here's essentially the difference. If you think about a high-quality learning classroom training experience, it's interactive, everybody participates, there's pre-work activities, exercises, post-work, and all of those things are present. We, at the Remote Leadership Institute, all of our classes are capped in class size. We believe that 12 people is pretty much the sweet spot for this kind of training. Facilitators can engage everybody, nobody gets to hide, everybody gets a chance to participate, and it's highly interactive using all of the tools of web meeting platforms that are appropriate: whiteboards, chat, polling, those sorts of things. So, you know, one of the objections is, why should we invest so much in a bunch of webinars? And the fact of the matter is, it's a live facilitated training experience. And that is also different from a lot of workshops out there where the class size is larger and it's more one-way broadcast. It's funny, we recently just finished up classroom series, the Remote Leadership Certificate series. And I was talking to one of our participants just the other day, and you know, one of the nice things is that once you are part of the Kevin Eikenberry group family, you tend to stay family. And so I was talking to her about some challenges that she's facing at work. And she said that one of the things that she found really interesting was that even though the class was focused on working remotely and working with your remote employees, that she found so much of it applied regardless of where her people were. And that's a really critical point, because I think the conversation about remote work has become very binary, right? People either say, oh, you know, all my people have to come into the office all the time, or all my people are remote. And in fact, 70+% of us have teams that are what we call a hybrid. Some folks are in the office all the time. Some people work from home a couple of days a week. Sometimes they're in a remote office. But it's not like it's one or the other, right? It's usually this mix. And so it's really important that we don't forget the evergreen things that we know about leadership. But one of the biggest challenges is, how do I do what I need to do as a leader when we're remote, when we're separated by technology? And so one of the big ahas for people is when we talk about leading virtual meetings and we talk about the importance of an agenda in keeping people engaged and keeping the meeting on track. And inevitably, somebody will say at the end of that course, wow, this stuff all applies to real meetings too. Now, first of all, they call them real meetings, which always cracks me up. But the answer is, yeah, it does. And I'm going to tell you the dirty little secret of training, which is maybe the most important thing that a training course class material can do, is simply take you out of your in the moment firefighting crazy and take a moment and become mindful and conscious of what it is you're doing. The single most valuable thing that happens in any learning event is stopping, saying, what do I do now? What should I be doing? And how do I get there? And sometimes that is the power of the facilitator, sometimes it's the content, and very often it's just the individual taking the time to breathe, take it into consideration, give some real clear thought to what they're doing and what they should be doing, and realizing what the path forward is. So when we're asked, can we apply this with people who aren't remote? The answer is yeah, mostly. And when you do have those people who are remote, it's important that you think about both the people who are co-located and those who are distant from the others, because part of what a long distance leader has to do, and part of what we spend a fair amount of time talking about, is the fact that we have to have this perception of equality between the people who are co-located and the people who are remote. And if we don't take into consideration the differences, the nuances, and we keep thinking about the people who are co-located with you, and you don't keep those in mind, you're not going to be the kind of leader to everybody on the team that you need to be. So can you apply it with your people who aren't remote? Absolutely. And the whole goal is to take a consistent approach and be perceived as fair and as good a leader with somebody regardless of where they're located. So there are two other really important things, I think, that we need to address. And I'm just going to point to the elephant in the room and say that a lot of people have questions about the investment in the series. They say, well, I know it's 6 parts and I'm sure it's good content, Wayne, but $1,800 is $1,800, and I'm having trouble getting the approval from my boss, from my training department, whoever is responsible for the purse strings. And so I think that there are a couple of things that we need to think about. If I'm an organization and I'm thinking about my people who are working remotely, there are probably 3 key things that are driving their business decisions right now. The first one is productivity, is work getting done. And a big part of being a good long distance leader is ensuring that goals are set, that metrics are established, that the lines of communication are open, so that both the employee and the organization are confident that people are working on the right things in the right way and getting things done. And so if the concern is, as we're moving to more and more people working remotely, will the work get done? The leaders, the individual managers and supervisors, are the ones who are going to be on the front line of making that happen. And investment in them will only help ensure that productivity continues. One of the big challenges among remote workers, and this is just starting to pop up, but leaders play a huge part in this, is turnover and retention. Quiet as it's kept, recruiters, headhunters, folks who are looking to poach your people love when people are working remotely, because there is a tendency in organizations that don't invest in this relationship for the work to become very transactional. There isn't the same emotional response to their teammates, to their manager. You don't walk into the building every day and feel the environment. And so remote workers, if they become disengaged, if they do not build the kind of relationships with their manager and their teammates that they would normally build, it means that they are ripe for picking. If you're hiring contractors, if it's strictly a transaction and there are no relationships built, communication isn't fun, engaging, thoughtful, people leave. One contract is the same as another. There are no barriers to leaving a virtual job. Literally, the only thing that changes is your passcode. So if your organization is concerned about turnover and retention, that's something that you need to take into account as you're thinking about, is this training worth the investment? It's also just to help the individual leaders. Leadership development is part of any good organization's success plan, including succession planning, but it's really important that the individual leaders are able to make the transition to this new world. And I've talked to 3 companies this week, and that's not an exaggeration, 3 companies this week who are in the process of moving from land-based, single locations to being over 50% telework. That's a fundamental sea change. So leaders are either going to be left to kind of deal with it on their own, which is what they've been dealing with so far, or they're going to feel supported by the organization, and the organization is going to have the confidence that things are actually going to be okay. Now, if you are having the conversation with somebody at your organization and you're trying to convince them, hey, this is going to be a good investment, there's really 3 things about this particular series that I think are, number 1, unique, and number 2, pretty powerful. The first is that you've already got a training budget for leadership and communication skills and those sorts of things, but is it really focused on working remotely, or is it the same training that you've always done with, oh yeah, and you have to do this when you're remote too, which is what a lot of leadership training has kind of devolved to. So it's really focused on the challenges of working remotely. The second thing is that virtual instructor-led training is very cost effective versus classroom training. First of all, if you think about it, no matter where your people are, you've got no travel costs, you're not flying an instructor in, you're paying for the cost of the training, to be sure, and the investment in that, but it's not going to be the same as catering rooms and booking hotel rooms and all of that. So cost-wise, dollars and cents, it's a good investment. And furthermore, since productivity is one of the things the company's most worried about, the training is spread out over 6 weeks in 2-hour modules. So there's no lost productivity. And if they miss a session, the sessions are recorded so that they have access to them not only immediately after the class, but in perpetuity ever after. So what is in this course, right? Let me just give you a quick reminder of the 6 modules. And it really is important that we look at this as a holistic learning experience. We start with how to create and manage remote teams, which is a big picture look. We call it the umbrella that everything else sits under. It answers the question, why does this feel so difficult? What are the differences? And we look at 3 models. Those of you who read Long Distance Leader are probably familiar with the remote leadership model. What we do as leaders hasn't changed, but the fact we're doing it through technology makes a huge difference. There is a model on how to build trust, and a model specific to technology that says, how do we choose the right tool for the right communication job, even if it's not our natural tendency? And once we look at those 3 things, we start to get really granular about specific challenges. There's managing teleworkers and increasing their productivity, which really looks at how do we help our remote workers take inventory of where they are and be really productive. There's a tendency to confuse activity with productivity sometimes. So we start with managing and helping teleworkers get the most from their time. Then we look at leading effective virtual meetings, which that alone, if you do the math on how much time we waste in meetings, is a powerful, powerful tool, and probably one of the most appreciated and enjoyed parts of the series. We take a look at goal setting and accountability, which is really key to answering the question, how do we know that people are working? Because they know what they're supposed to be working on. Then we look at coaching and feedback from a distance. How is that impacted when we work remotely? How does technology play a role? What do we need to do? And how does this match with what we're telling our people about coaching now? And then finally, and this is really important, there's a sixth session which puts it all together. We don't just give you a bunch of training and expect you to connect the dots yourself. It's really important that we examine the through line through all of the material, and that includes pre-work, post-work, exercises during the class. So I know that we said it was $1,800 for this series, and it is, and it's a good investment at that price. And some of you are having a little challenge getting the approval for that. So for the first 5 of you who register after seeing this video, there's a couple of things that we want to add to this. First is that one of the technology challenges that makes people the craziest probably is video, or email rather. And we have an email video course. It's 2 recorded videos, very extensive pre-work on writing and managing email. That course is $199. You can download it on our website, but you will get that course for free if you are one of the first 5 to sign up for the Remote Leadership Certificate Series, one of the 2 sessions left this year. The second thing is a 60-minute webinar that tackles a topic that is of primary interest to team leaders, and we haven't really had the time to go into it in the video series, and that's dealing with conflict in a virtual environment. This is a 60-minute webinar. It is a recorded webinar, and it'll give you tools to deal with conflict more effectively and confidently as a remote leader. It's also available as a download. You can buy it on the website. But as I say, if you register for the Remote Leadership Certificate Series in the next couple of days, you will receive $348 in bonuses. The Writing and Managing Email course, as well as the video webinar on dealing with virtual conflict. So there we have it. I really, really hope that you have gotten some value from the video series. I enjoyed doing it for you. I hope that this session has answered whatever questions you might have. And, you know, it's just our pleasure to help talk about this topic, remove some of the mystery, and help you out. So that's it. That's what we wanted to do with this Facebook Live. Thank you for those of you, Matt, Kent, Catherine, hi. I've got a couple of questions. If anybody has questions that you want to put in here, we are more than happy to answer that. I'm not going anywhere. It's only 4:20 here on the West Coast. But I hope that you found this time valuable. Please know that if you drop me an email, wayne@remoteleadershipinstitute.com, I'll be glad to answer any of your individual personal questions. Marlene, any of the team at the Remote Leadership Institute are happy to talk to you at any time. And if you go to the page for the video series where you've been viewing them, you can also schedule consults with me if you're with an organization and you have questions about whether this is right for the larger organization or anything to do with making the move to leading remotely. We're at your service. So if there is nothing else, this was our first attempt at a Facebook Live through the Remote Leadership Institute. We got through it. Nobody burst into flames. Nobody dialed 911. So I'm going to call that a raging victory. Thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you as part of this series. And it's, as always, a pleasure working with you.